fantastic to see such a huge crowd here in St. John's Church. I was just talking to somebody down there, the present minister for the church, and I was telling her when we were growing up, we were told to cross over to the far side of the street and we were passing the Church of Ireland. And you mightn't believe it, but I'm 65 years old now. The first time I stood in our Church of Ireland in Ballyshannon, where I grew up, was about 3 months ago. And it's taken me that long to get there, and it's an absolutely beautiful church. As you can see, the church is in really good condition, but as always, they need sort of to keep the thing moving along, keep all the maintenance up and stuff. And in that regard, the concert here, of course, is free. But if you feel like contributing, there's a draw down there for €400 hamper, and it's €2 a line. And as you're passing out, if you feel like, just drop the money in the bottle, and you can sign in, put your name and address. Obviously, your name and address and phone number. If you want to win that. Usually, people at this point talk about exits. I'm afraid last one out get burned, I think. They didn't think of such modern things way back when this place was built. Also, I'd ask you to maybe turn off your phones, because it just, I don't know why people do that. I love when they go off the begging. You have a chance to embarrass whoever it is whose phone went off. You're in for a real treat today. I have to say that of the 28 years of the Joe Mooney Summer School, these last 3 years have been sort of the highlight of the thing, or one of the highlights, of course, is this particular afternoon that we spend here in the presence of Orla, who originally comes from Roscommon. Can I say that? No, sorry. Are you still? Oh, yes.
Naturalised sleep for a moment.
Yeah. There was actually a major controversy when they decided to get married. I think a special dispensation from Roscommon County Council.
Only with you, Charlie.
Orla, of course, is an accomplished harpist, keyboard player, piano player, choir mistress. She has worked with the Drumshanbo Adult Choir for many, many years, and is coming back to us again in September. We're all looking forward to that. Eamon is a very good vocalist, good at all those things. But he at one point in time played the bodhrán to the neighbours' dismay, but he's thankfully given that up now, and he's feeling better. So the last 2 years, last year, the year before last, they did a wonderful afternoon of songs from and around the period of the First World War. Last year they did the Yeats's poetry and songs, some of the poetry converted to music, and this year they're doing songs and stories from around the 1916 period, and Eamon will explain all of that as he goes. So, incidentally, I must say our friend Mary McMorrow was here. And unlike me, she played around this church in and out of it since she was 3 years of age. When Reverend Robert Fofi was here, she was friendly with her daughter. And she's famous for that. She's known as a turncoat. But anyway, that's just by the way. I know you're going to enjoy this evening, so would you welcome Eamon and Orla Daly.
Thanks very much, Charlie. The voice isn't in the best of form, but that's why we have amplification here. But we'll keep going. Look, it's great that you've all come here today. Thanks very much for coming. And I suppose we are just a drop in the ocean as regards all the wonderful commemoration celebrations of the 1916 Rising that have been occurring all over the country. I think the country has done us justice as regards commemorating what has happened. So we're just going to give our little contribution to it, and I'd just like to mention before, in case I forget, we have the oldest member in the audience here tonight is an aunt of Orla's, Bridie Ty, from originally from Kilturret, Drumcong, and living now over in Bonby, and she's 95 years of age, and she's here today. So if I dole out any facts, and I hope to sing more than talk, that Bridie will put her hand up and say you're wrong there. He was near enough at the time and lived and all that happened afterwards. But anyway, right, you're very right. Dublin City, 1913. This is a ballad, also known as the Ballad of James Larkin, written by Donogh MacDonagh, who was son of Thomas MacDonagh, and he wrote this song, and he was 4 years old when his father died. But the reason we're doing it, I know it's before 1916, but it does actually, I suppose, give an incidence of what happened, or an account of what happened from the lockout in 1913, the Dublin City lockout, and it was perhaps Ireland's best remembered labour dispute. It started in August 1913 when a group of about 400 employers, led by William Martin Murphy, they decided to take action against what seemed to be the rise of militancy amongst workers in industry and circles, and the employers combined to compel the workers to withdraw from the ITGWU, which you and I all know as the Irish Transport and General Workers Union, that they would either leave or they were going to be locked out. The lockout lasted 5 months, from late August 1913 to late January 1914, and it inflicted terrible hardship on the working class of Dublin. It was, a focus point of the great, I have to say, the great Struggle City series on RT in 1978-79. But out of the struggle came James Connolly's Citizen Army, and it went because they wanted to defend workers, and it went on to play, of course, a vital part in the 1960 Rising, together with the IRB, Fianna Éireann, and Common Mom. So this anyway is written by Donogh MacDonagh. In Dublin City in 1913, the boss was rich and he employed the slave. The women worked and the children starved, till Larkin came like a mighty wave. The workers cringed when that bossman thundered, and 70 hours was his weekly chore. He asked for little and less was granted, lest getting little he might ask for more. Then on came Larkin in 1913, a mighty man with a mighty tongue, the voice of labour, the voice of justice, and he was gifted and he was young. God sent us Larkin in 1913, a labouring man with a union tongue. He raised the worker and gave him courage, he was the hero, the worker's son. Then Larkin left us, we seemed defeated, the night was dark for the working man. What on him Conwy with new hope and counsel, his motto was that we'd rise again. In 1916 in Dublin City, the English soldiers, they burned our town. They shelled the buildings and shot our leaders, their heart was buried beneath the crown. They shot McDermott and Case and Plunkett, they shot McDonagh and Clark the Brave. From Leek and Maynham they took their bodies to Arbor Hill, to a quicklime grave. But last of all of the 7 leaders, I'll sing the praise of James Connolly, the voice of labour, the voice of justice, who gave his life that men would be free. In many ways, James Connolly was better known as a socialist, and he was born in Edinburgh in 1868, and he joined the British Army. He served with the British Army. He joined actually at 14 years of age, and he served with the British Army for 7 years. Then he became involved in socialism. He moved to Dublin in 1896. He founded the Irish Socialist Republican Party. He spent 7 years in New York, where he lectured and organised, and then he returned to Ireland in 1910, and there he formed the Socialist Party, and he was very much involved with Larkin during the 1913 lockout. And just a lovely song written by Patrick Galvin, a Cork poet, he said, "Where, oh, where is our James Connolly? Where, oh, where can that brave man be? He is gone to organise the union, that working men might yet be free. Where, oh, where is our citizen army? Where, oh, where can the brave band be? They have gone to join the great rebellion and break the bonds of slavery, and to be there to lead the van, who will be there to lead the van. Oh, who should be there but our James Connolly, the hero of each working man. And then there was another song written afterwards by Daly, and this is the year more or less of Brendan on the Moor, but let's sing a couple of verses. There is a page in history where the workers first fought back, and the might of exploitation at last began to crack. In farm and field and factory, and workshop, mine and mill, a flame was lit, a beacon bright, a flame that's burning still, and Connolly was there. Connolly was there, all brave and undaunted, James Connolly was there. William Martin Murphy and his Dublin millionaires tried bribery and corruption, hypocrisy and fear, to break the transport union. The scouts they did enlist, till all the graft was shattered by a scarlet iron fist, and Connolly was there. Connolly was there, all brave and undaunted, James Connolly was there. They say that he was murdered, shot, dying in a chair. But oh, our call for freedom, Irish workers don't despair. In farm and field and factory, and workshop, mine and mill, that flaming flight, that beacon light, the flame is burning still, and James Connolly will be there. James Connolly will be there, all brave and undaunted, James Connolly will be there. Later on, hopefully we'll have time to sing the best known James Connolly song, and it's not about being a social, but it was more about being a rebel in the GPO in the 1916 Rising. This is a song just called My Old Tote Gun, and it refers to the Hote gun running in 26th of July 1914. It was a successful landing of guns from Germany to be used by the Irish volunteers. It was organised by people like Erskine Childers, Owen McNeill, Bulmer Hobson, the O'Rahilly, so on. And 900 guns were transported, but it really emulated the Larne gun running of a few months previously in April 2014 in the North of Ireland, which not 900 guns, but 35,000 rifles and 5 million rounds of ammunition were brought from Germany. So this is called two verses from My Old Tote Gun. There is sorrow in my heart, oh my old tote gun, since we lately are to part, oh my old tote gun, for an Ireland's day of need, well you proved a friend indeed. When you met the bullet's speed, oh my old tote gun, I was glad when you were here, oh my old tote gun, and no foeman did I fear, oh my old tote gun, for your bark and bitter plight, but the Saxon curse to fly, and they wouldn't dare to fight, oh my old tote gun. That's it, yeah, okay. I'd just like to sing a song now, a popular song of the time, a song I love. It was written by a lady, Josephine Rowe wrote the words, and Dermot McMorrow, famous name, composed. It was published in 1910, and it's called Macushla. And I'd like to dedicate this to anti-Bridie, our anti-Bridie down below. This was recorded in 1910 by John McCormick. It's very popular, even in 1916, it's hugely popular song. Macushla, your sweet voice is calling me softly again and again. Macushla, I hear its dear bleeding. My blue-eyed Macushla, I hear it in vain. Macushla, your white arms are reaching. I feel them unfolding, caressing me still. Fling them out from the darkness, my lost love, Macushla. Let them find me and bind me again if they will. Macushla, your red lips are saying that it is a dream and love is a lie. Then awaken, Macushla, awaken from your dreaming. My blue-eyed Macushla, awaken to stay. The next song is called Bannistrand, or Lonely Bannistrand, and it's about Roger Casement's efforts to bring arms into Ireland for the Irish volunteers. And Roger Casement was born in Sandgrove in Dublin in 1864 and raised in County Antrim. He joined the British Colonial Service in 1892 and gained a great international reputation as a humanitarian for his reporting on the exploitation of native workers and of European employers in Africa and South America. He became more involved in Irish nationalist cause, and he believed passionately in the necessity of German aid for a successful uprising in Ireland. And his reason for going to Germany was to seek arms, and the steamship The Odd, carrying 20,000 rifles and machine guns and ammunition, he was in a submarine along with that ship, carrying him to the Kerry coast at Fenit. But a series of mishaps during which 2 men were killed, coming to meet him and so on. The alteration of plans, breakdown of communications result in the capture of Roger Casement. So we'll do a few verses from this. It's called Bannistrand. Twas on Good Friday morning, all in the month of May, a German ship was signaling beyond out in the bay, with 20,000 rifles all ready for to land, but no answering signal came from the lonely Bannistrand. No signal answers from the shore, Sir Roger sadly said. No comrades here to meet me, alas they must be dead. But I must do my duty, and at once I mean to land. So in a small boat rowed ashore to the lonely Bannistrand. The RIC were hunting for Sir Roger high and low. They found him at McKenna's fort, they said, "You are our foe." Said he on Roger Casement, "I came to my native land. I meant to free my countrymen on the lonely Bannistrand." 'Twas in an English prison that they led him to his death. "I'm dying for my country," he said with his last breath. They buried him in British soil far from his native land, and the wild waves sang his requiem on the lonely Bannistrand. It's just worth remembering as well that in 1965 the British government under the Labour government under Harold Wilson, that they allowed the return of Roger Casement's remains to Ireland, where they were reinterred in Glasnevin Cemetery, and he was given a state funeral. We're just going to go on now to a song written by Brian Morfield out of Walter Jones, and it's called Porrick Pierce, because obviously he was, I suppose, to most people he was the main figure in the rising, but I suppose the more research one does into it, one realised that there were a lot of other people involved, including Sean McDermott from Kilty Tar. But this is called Porrick Pierce. In Dublin town in 1916, the flame of freedom did arise. A group of men with determination caught an empire by surprise. Through the streets the men were marching, rallied with their hopes and fears. At the end the boys came searching for their leader, Robert Pierce. The poets and the Irish rebels, the Gaelic scholar and the visionary, we gave to them no fitting tribute, when Ireland's at peace only that can be. When Ireland's a nation united and free. For 5 long days the battle rages, 5 long nights the battle war. We watched as Dublin city blazes, see your men fall through the floor. Now Ireland's proud of our effort for our cause, we fought with pride. Save our lives, save our city, make our peace with fearless pride. The poets and the Irish rebels, the Gaelic scholar and the visionary, we gave to them no fitting tribute, when Ireland's a peace only that can be. When Ireland's a nation united and free. And just on that, Orla's going to sing a song. It started out actually as a poem written by Porrick Pierce in 1914. And it's interesting, I suppose, that most of the 7 signatories that were involved in, there were poets or people involved in lecturing in universities and so on. I suppose the odd man out in a way, and who represented, I suppose, rural people more than anybody else was Sean McDermott. But Porrick Pierce wrote this one. It's called Oro Shitavawanya, which if you're of my vintage, you would be singing heartily in the gate at this time of the year. If you're over doing Irish classes, you would be singing Oro Shitavawanya a few times every day. It was written by him in 1914, and he turned it then into a marching song for the Irish Volunteers. And some people interpret this song as an invitation to all Irishmen fighting with the British Army in Europe for the freedom of small nations to come home and tackle what's called the ancient foe on their own little island of Ireland.
Oro Shilava Awalya, Oro Shilava Awalya, Oro Shilava Awalya, and Ishtar Hoston Towery. Shade the Bahaman Balade, or Clare Grass to Vettingaven, Kukibra Ishel of Mirnock, Stuart the Lesh the Gal, Oro Shilava Awalya, Oro Shilava Awalya, Oro Shilava Awalya, and Ishtar
a lot of, it's strange in a way that maybe the first song written about 1916 was written by Father Charles O'Neill, who'll sing it later on hopefully, from County Down, and it's called Foggy Tune. But you know, since then, an awful lot of songs have been written about, not an awful lot, a great number of songs have been written about 1916. This is a more recent one, and it was commissioned by Joe McManus of New York and John Shabbo, and he asked our own Nick Blake here from Leitrim Village, who was a great songwriter, has been recorded by Christian Moore has done his recording, this is one. We'll do part of this, it's about 6.5 minutes long, we'll do about half of it. Maybe in a different tempo than what Mick is doing, but it's called Sean McDiarmid, The Pride of Carranmore. And it's worth, to people who don't know, but Sean McDiarmid was a very significant figure. I think in recent times he's become more to the fore. People realise what he did with his work, definitely as an organiser for Sinn Féin and the election, the by-election in 1908 in North Leitrim, and where he was the looking after Charles Dolan. He didn't get elected, but he was defeated by an Irish Nationalist Party candidate, which is all sort of nationalist party. But he also, the people would say about him that the 1916 Rising would not have happened without Sean McDiarmid. It wasn't that he was the great military strategist or operator during the 1916 Rising, but it was through his organisation of the IRB and getting people involved. It was a secret organisation, of course, and it was people couldn't refuse him when he asked them to do something, but he enrolled people in it and so on, and it would not have happened probably without Sean McDiarmid. And the amazing thing about him is that he left no accounts of what he was doing, that if you want to find out where Sean McDiarmid was in 1903 or 1910 or whatever, you have to look up the British intelligence, and they will tell you he left such a place at such a time, smoking Clonmel, but he left no records himself. And the old Irish problem, of course, was in every rising that there were informers. And this time, probably through the work of Sean McDiarmid, it happened that the rising took place, not the way he wanted it. He would have wanted it to be a more fulsome rising, but anyway, he was sentenced to, in recent years, you know, people like Gerard McAtasney and Brian Feeney, and not forgetting an old a teacher of mine in St. Pat's in Cavan, Charles Travers. They've done great work as regards researching Sean McDiarmid's life. And all you have to do is read the references by the likes of Thomas Clark, Kathleen Clark's wife, and what she thought of Sean McDiarmid, and she thought, you know, he was the person as regards organisation for the rising. So this is a song written by Mick Blake, commissioned and said by Joe McManus of New York and John Shabbo. It's called Sean McDiarmid, The Pride of Carranmore.
In the town of Kiltinclough, a monument to stand to a proud and noble Leitrim man who lived and died for Ireland. He organised an army and he stood against the crown, so Irish men and women would no more be beaten down. And driven by desire to rekindle freedom's flame, he signed a proclamation that rejected England's claim to Ireland and her people, her destiny restored. The man was Sean McDiarmid, the pride of Carranmore. Now along the shores of Loughlin there stood a mansion grand, and the landlords that did dwell there were amongst the cruelest in the land. 39 families Lord Tottenham did rout, and later Colonel Adamson 100 did cast out. The pain of these evictions young McDiarmid saw firsthand, and there and then the rebel vowed to one day make it stand. I'll rid the Irish nation of their rights forevermore. The pledge of Sean McDiarmid, the pride of Carranmore. So we planned a revolution, preached the fiery gospel of the free, promised an end to persecution, liberty. Then one Easter Monday morning he realized his plan, when poets stood with playwrights and rose up with the working man, to fight the forces of King George and set the country free, though he knew deep inside his heart it could not end in victory. But in the glorious madness of a rising doom to flay, he hoped his deeds would resurrect the spirit of the gay. For 6 long days they battled till they could take no more. Enough said John McDiarmid, the pride of Carramore.
That song is so interesting is because it shows maybe the reasons why people took up the cause they did. And this is John McDermott living in North Leitrim, which, you know, everybody will describe Leitrim overall as desolate and remote and so on. And just what he experienced during his childhood and why he became, I suppose the term used nowadays would be radicalised, but you know, that he did. And later on, and you know, that has different connotations. It's great in some places and it's not so great in other places. But you know, later on in that song, Mick does criticise, you know, what has happened in the country today and the way it's turned out. Orla's going to sing a song written by, or a poem turned into song by Joseph Mary Plunkett. He was the son of the Papal County. He was one of the secretaries, of course, suffered from TB and was very ill when he fought in the 1916 Rising. And he, as we all know, married his fiancée Grace Gifford in Kilmainham jail just hours before he was executed. And the melody she's using here is a melody that was put together by Charlie Lennon, and we were up, I'm sure some of you are, at a wonderful concert in Kilty Cahir there a few months ago. Charlie Lennon has a new album out and it's called Aya na Halia, A Terrible Beauty, and this is one of the songs that he took to Joseph Mary Plunkett and he put this air to it, and it's called You See His Blood Upon the Rose. Sure. You heard Orla? You're flying.
And in the stars, the glory of his heart.
in the First World War, John Redmond, leader of the Irish Nationalist Party in Westminster, he encouraged Irishmen to join the British Army in the belief that by showing solidarity with Britain, that Britain in turn would not renege on its commitments to home rule for Ireland. But he called on his Irish volunteers to support Britain. The majority went with him, but a small group, about 10, 11,000 or so, they objected to it, and they wanted a more active and more militaristic attitude towards the whole thing. And they broke away and called themselves, they kept as the Irish Volunteers, but Redmond's group were called Irish National Volunteers. And about 25,000 did join the British Army, but the rest of them, the Irish Volunteers, they remained as they were. And it was from this group and from the IRB that most of those in the rising came. But there was opposition to the war growing, and you can see in the local newspapers against enlistment in the British Army and so on. And it was soon voiced in anti-enlistment songs, popular at the time. And this song, said to be written by Sean Casey, but it's called The Grand Old Dame Britannia. Says the grand old Dame Britannia, and poor little Belgium thriving through, says the grand old Dame Britannia. Shut your ears to the Sinn Féin lies, you know every gate for England dies. You have home rule beneath the clear blue skies, says the grand old Dame Britannia. Oh Johnny Redmond, you're the boy, says the grand old Dame Britannia. He's Ireland's pride and England's joy, says the grand old Dame Britannia. Rebels through the country stuck, shouting 67 and bachelor's walk. Did you ever hear such foolish talk, says the grand old Dame Britannia? You'll need a pound or two from me, says the grand old Dame Britannia, for your old Tiberian Academy, says the grand old Dame Britannia. You know we've got the Huns to quell, we need our money for shot and shell. You have to sulk and go to hell, says the grand old Dame Britannia. Now scholars, hurlers, saints and bards, says the grand old Dame Britannia, come along and join the Irish Guards, says the grand old Dame Britannia. Every man who treads in the German fleet, he get a parcel tied up neat, a whole rude badge and a winding sheet, says the grand old Dame Britannia. This is a song about Howard Pearce's last letter to his mother. Three verses, we'll do two. First verse is to his mother, and then the second is to his brother. And he didn't realise that Willie was in prison, all right, but he didn't realise that Willie was going to die. But as far as I know, Willie Pearce was the only man who said that he was guilty in the trials that followed, because he didn't want to be parted from his brother Paul Pearce. They were so close, and that's the price he paid for it. And he was executed, and perhaps his life would have been spared if he hadn't said that. But they were so close together he couldn't dream. But Paul didn't know this when he wrote the letter. But anyway, this song is based on it. It's written by Sean and Frank O'Mara, the same brothers who wrote Grace. This is called My Last Farewell. I am writing just to say I won't be home. There's something that I have to do, and I must do alone. They've taken me and they've put me in this lonely prison cell. Tonight my thoughts are with you as I say my last farewell. So say goodbye to Margaret, Mary, Bridget and me all. I have no words to tell you how much I missed you all. And though I may not
Won't you take good care of all the folks for me? Go home to Rathfarnham on the day they set you free. I was happy when you stood by me in all that we've been through. No one has ever had so true a brother such as you. So say goodbye to Margaret, Mary, Bridget and me all. I have no words to tell you how much I missed you all. And though I may not show it, you know I've loved you well. So in my final letter I will bid my last farewell.
My brother and sister-in-law and my sister and her husband here, Bart and Pauline and Anthony and Margaret and Pauline Bart brought me out to St. Enda's there many years ago, a good few years, well, some years ago, yeah, a lovely afternoon out there in St. Enda's in Rathfarnham. And we're going to continue with a song, and the only thing about this song is it's another popular song from the time, and it was first recorded by Charles Harrison on the Victor record label where John McCormick recorded as well. But this was recorded, believe it or not, on the 19th of July 1916, 100 years ago yesterday. So I have to sing it. And it's a popular song of the time. It was recorded in New Jersey and it reached number one, believe it or not. We thought our age group, the new number ones are our invention, but there were charts for sheet music. Gramophones were a bit behind, but there were charts for sheet music. And this reached number one in the US Billboard sheet music charts in October 1916, and it stayed there for 8 weeks. It was just like lovely leads from it. So Larry wasn't the first one. Larry kept the Beatles off the charts, you know that, but lovely leads. There you are, Charlie. You know, the Beatles fan, and there he is. That's why he's at the back door. He was coming back. But anyway, this one is called Ireland Must Be Heaven from Another Pen from There.
I've often heard my daddy speak of Ireland's lakes and dells. The place must be like heaven if it's half like what he tells. There's roses fair and shamrocks there, and laughing waters flow. I have never seen that Isle of Green, but there's one thing sure I know. Ireland must be heaven, for an angel came from there. I never knew a living soul one half as sweet or fair, for her eyes are like the starlight, and the white clouds match her hair. Sure, Ireland must be heaven, for my mother came from there. I've pictured in my fondest dreams old Ireland's vales and rills. I see a stairway to the sky for mire, verdant hills. Each wave that's in the ocean blue just loves to hug the shore. So if Ireland isn't heaven, then it must be right next door. Ireland must be heaven, for an angel came from there. I never knew a living soul one half as sweet or fair, for her eyes are like the starlight, and the white clouds match her hair. Sure, Ireland must be heaven, for my and from there.
We're going to do with a song written by Padder Carney. Padder Carney is best known, I suppose, for having written the words to the Soldier Song with music by Patrick Heaney. And after 1916, it replaced probably God Save Ireland and a nation once again as the anthem of Irish nationalists. It was sung a lot in the GPO and other places during the 1916 Rising, and was formally adopted as our national anthem in 1926. He also wrote Down by the Lens Side, the Tricolor Ribbon, that we're going to sing later on, Down by the Liffey Side, and I'm tracking it down a song called Not Crockery about our neighbours in Roscommon, Not Crockery, so be very interested to track it down. But this called Around the Town, otherwise known as Éireann go Bragh.
I'll sing you a song of a row in the town, when the green flag went up and the crown right came down. 'Twas the neatest and sweetest thing ever you saw, and they played the best game played in Éireann go Bragh. Well, I tell some brave men now of every degree, with their rifles and bayonets they swore they'd be free, and one fine Easter morning they laughed at the law, and they played the best game played in Éireann go Bragh. God rest Gallant Pearse and his comrades who died, Tom Clark, MacDonagh, McDermott, McBride, and here's to Jim Conley who kept on hurrah as he placed the machine guns for Éireann go Bragh. Here's sent to the men of the brave rank and file, and the loyal-hearted women of Éireann's green line. Let three men salute them in honour and awe, the bravest and greatest in Éireann go Bragh.
When I was growing up in the 50s and 60s and going to concerts across the road in what was Movies Hall, I know the hall isn't there now, but it's very similar to what was built in this place. But a lot of the concerts you went to, when we were singing what people would refer to as rebel songs, this is one that I remember very well. It's called The Dying Rebel. I think it's written by a man called Seamus Kavanagh. And we're only going to sing a few verses because we want to cover as much as we can. But the song reflects the impact the Rising had on ordinary people. We lost sons and daughters who were active in the Rising, but also who were innocent, maybe civilians caught in the crossfire. It was called The Dying Rebel.
The night was dark and the fight was over. The moon shone down O'Connell Street. I stood alone where brave men perished. Those men have gone to their God to meet. My only son was shot in Dublin, fighting for his country home.
horizon was the Foggy Jew. And they were proposed by a man called Canon Charles O'Neill, who was parish priest of Cleocoon, County Down, later Newcastle. And in 1919 he went to Dublin and attended a sitting of the first Daly in the Mansion House. And he was so struck by, and they were calling it the roll, he was so struck by the number of elected members who were absent because they were in prison. And it inspired him to write the words of this song, a few verses each. The Foggy Jew.
As down the glen one Easter morn to the city fair rode I. There are lines of marching men in squadrons passed me by. No pipes did hum, no battle drum did sound its loud tattoo, but Angelus bell or the Liffey swell rang out in the foggy dew. Right proudly high o'er Dublin town they hung out the flag of war. 'Twas better to die 'neath an Irish sky than a stew flower Sudal bar. And from the plains of Royal Mead brave men came hurrying through, while Britannia's guns with their long-range guns sailed in through the foggy dew. But the bravest fell and the requiem bell rang out mournfully and clear, for those who died at Easter time in the springing of the year. While the world did gaze in deep amaze at those fearless men and few, who bore the fight that freedom's light might shine through the foggy dew.
I'd like to welcome here, great to be here with us today, Reverend Linda, who is the minister here for this church here in Drumshanbo. Reverend Linda, you're very welcome. I think she's down there, isn't she? Yeah, I know Reverend Linda, a lovely person. I've met her often. She has been singing here on a couple of occasions there, and she's a great singer. Give her the guitar and she'll go for hours. But lovely to have you here. And just to remind us as well that we're in a church here where quite a number of people from Drumshanbo were members of the nationalist community, people like Patrick Boyle. They joined up, they had actually been very involved in the nationalist aspect of lives here in Drumshanbo, and it's worth remembering that they lived very closely together, the two communities, and there was a very big Protestant, that means Methodist Church of Ireland community here at the time. And because we have two, what you might call Protestant churches here, one here, Church of Ireland, and the Methodist Church in Carrick Road. And quite a number of people joined from here. In fact, the GA was revived in 1913 by a man called Patrick Boyle. He was also a founder member of the Irish Volunteers, and he, along with others, just went off. But by 1915, the Irish Volunteers and GA had just fallen apart with so many people dead. 60 left in the first year to join the chapel. Most of them, I dare say, were Catholics at the time. 13 from the community that we know of here died, including this man up here, Robert Ernest Quayle, a very well-known family. His father was a hugely popular man here in the community with everybody, and he unfortunately died with about 5 weeks to go to the end of the war. That's his plaque up there, Robert Ernest Quayle. So it's worth remembering that we are here in a community that would have been loyal, would have been unionist to that tradition, and that we are here today now doing what I'm doing. So it's it is, I suppose, great in a way that this church here has been revitalised in a sense structurally by, we have a commemoration down there to the First World War at the very back of the hall. Has been it belongs to both communities. It was built in 1829 for 1,101 not euros but pounds at the time, and from a grant by the Board of Fruits, the Church of Ireland body at the time. We're going to continue just with a song that I came across. I heard on radio there some time ago. Susan McKeown, the singer, she gave an account about her great grandmother had been widowed at a very young age, and how she was a songwriter and so on, and then her mother was also involved in music. And it wasn't until her mother died a few years ago she went through her bag and she came through what her great grandmother had written. And this is one of them. It's called Hoist the Flag, and it's in honour of the Irish volunteers. Okay?
Hoist up our flag, our banner true, our country's freedom now to gain, and righteous men shall make our land the foremost one of freedom's strain. From many parts come faithful hearts, the olden glories of our land, to settle high before they die, and leave for us this nation grand. Hear the loud ringing cheers for the brave volunteers as they proudly march along, to save our country's honour and her faith and hope and song. Hear the loud ringing cheers for the brave volunteers as they proudly march along, to save our country's honour and our faith and hope and song.
We did a song, a marching song as well here with a man called L.C. Grealish from America 2 years ago when we did songs of the First World War, and that was an Irish volunteer song as well. Also Thomas McDonald wrote a song about the Irish volunteers. That was a marching song. I just continue with a song, this is called The Wind That Shakes the Barley. And to most people, associated with the Ken Loach film, but it was written by a man called Robert Wyatt Joyce from Limerick, and it's written from the perspective of a doomed young Wexford rebel who was about to sacrifice his relationship with his loved one, and he's plunged into the cauldron of violence associated with the 1798 rebellion. And the references to barley, this is interesting, the references to barley in the song derive from the fact that the rebels often carried barley or oats in their pockets as provisions for men on the march. And they gave rise to the post-rebellion phenomenon of barley growing and marking the croppy holes. That's the holes of, where unmarked graves of nationalists, Republicans would have fought against the British forces, and this is where they were thrown into these graves. But by doing so, by planting the barley in it, it symbolised the regenerative nature of Irish resistance to British rule. And the idea was, I suppose, that the barley will grow every year in the springtime of the year. This is said to symbolise Irish resistance to British rule, and that Ireland will never be. But I'll just sing a couple of verses of it. It's called The Wind That Shakes the Barley. I sat within the valley green, I sat me with my true love. My sad heart strove the two between, the old love and the new love. The old for her, the new that made me think of Ireland dearly, while soft the wind blew down the glen and shook the golden barley. 'Twas hard the woeful words to frame, to break the ice that bound us, but harder still to share the shame of foreign chains around us. And so I said, the mountain glen I seek at morning early, and join the bold
benighted men, while soft winds blow the barley. The reason I sang that song is because it was one of the most popular songs apparently in Jacob's Biscuit Factory and the GPO and so on that they sang. Also a nation once again, God Save Ireland, you know, when the rebellion was going on. These were the songs that were sung. Also a very popular one was The Lass of Offering, but that one, Win the Chicks of Barley, was obviously a very popular song at the time, even though it dates back to 1798, but probably get an inspiration. This next song is The Soldiers Are Coming Among, written by a man called Brian Higgins, otherwise known as Brian the Bon Bon. He was a Sinn Féin politician, founding member of Sinn Féin. He took part in the Easter 1916 Rising, and Coming Among, it was launched in Wynn's Hotel, Dublin in April 1914 with Constance Markovic and Kathleen Tarr, Orla Kent, widow of Eamon Kent, Mrs. Thomas Kettle, whose husband died fighting for the British Army, Miss Owen O'Neill, and many more there for the launch. But it wasn't until 2 years later actually that we had 4 years later, that we had a branch here in Drumshanbo, and it was started in Drumshanbo in the rooms, the Sinn Féin club rooms, which had the Sinn Féin had been founded here in March 1980, and then coming on in April 1918. And the first president was Miss Jean Angle. The secretary was the secretary of Miss Emma Ireland, and the treasurer was Miss Jean Angle as well. So this is a song called "Soldiers Are Coming Among." All honour to old Queen of Heron, all praise to the men of our race, who in days of betrayal and slavery saved Ireland from ruin and disgrace. But do not forget in your praising of them and of deeds they have done, their loyal and true-hearted comrades, the soldiers of Common Among. They stand for the honour of Ireland as sisters in days that are gone, and they march with their brothers to freedom, the soldiers of Common Among. No great-hearted daughter of Ireland, who died for her sake long ago, who stood in the gap of her danger, defying the Sassenach foe, was ever more gallant or worthy of glory in high-sounding brand than the comrades of Oglina Heron, the soldiers of Common Among. They stand for the honour of Ireland as sisters in days that are gone, and they march with their brothers to freedom, the soldiers of Common Among. They stand for the honour of Ireland as sisters in days that are gone, and they march with their brothers to freedom, the soldiers of Common Among. No, time is getting on now. Just like to do this one. It's a poem written by Dr. Patrick Brown, was better known as Padraig the Broom, and he wrote a poem, Sean McDermott, and was published in 1970. He actually spent some time with Sean McDermott in his cell on the 10th of May. That's the 2 nights before he died, actually, and Lynn Ryan and her sister Phyllis, Lynn Ryan was Sean McDermott's girlfriend. They visited on the final night and were with him up until an hour or so before he died. But we put this anyway to the ear of a piece written by Patrick Cassidy in his wonderful album about the 1916 beautiful orchestra music, and it's called Surrender. So we put this to it, but it's called Shabbat Jared, Your Pale Dead Face. Your pale dead faith with sure insistent play shall haunt my soul as long as thought endures, waking remembrance of your wasted frame, a fire with all conquering soul of yours. At last I saw you captive in the net, and heard you into maiden's prison cell. Review that patient years with no regret, and say in sight of death that all was well. Review that patient years with no regret, and say in sight of death that all was well.
This piece written by Francis Ledwidge, who, as you know, was joined the British Army in 1914 and was very friendly with Thomas MacDonagh. I suppose this captivates as well what was happening across the line, that there were divides in every family and communities and so on between who joined the British Army and who stayed true to the Irish Republican Brotherhood and later on Sinn Féin and so on. This is called Lament for Thomas MacDonagh. This is a poem written by Francis Ledwidge. We put it to the air of Bitter Cry, and it's a well-known Irish song. And I'd love to go into it, we don't have the time, I'd love to go into the history of it, written by a man called Cathal Bui McGilligan, who comes from down the road from Black Lion, Belcoo area. It's called Cathal Bui Country.
He shall not fear that etern cry in the wild scout where he is slain, nor voices of the sweeter birds of the wailing of the rain, nor shall he know when love march blows through slanting snows, our fanfare shrill, longing to flame the golden cup of many an upset daffodil. But when the dark cow leaves their lure and pastures poor with greedy weeds, perhaps he'll hear our low at morn, lifting your horn and pleasant needs. Nor shall he know when love march blows through slanting snows, our fanfare shrill, longing to flame the golden cup of many an upset daffodil. We have to sing this song. It's a lovely song. Everybody loves it. It's called Great
Grace, and it's written again by the people who wrote My Last Farewell.
As we gather in the chapel here in Duncan of Jay, I think about the last few weeks, or will they say we failed from our school days? They have told us we must yearn for liberty, yet all I want in this dark place is to have you there with me. Oh, grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger, and take me out to dawn and I was dying. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. Now as the dawn is breaking, my heart is breaking too. On this May morn, as I walk out, my thoughts will be of you. And I write some words upon the wall, so everyone will know I love so much that I could see his blood upon the rose. Oh, grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger, then take me out to dawn and I will die. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye.
We're coming near the end now, and we just go through a satirical song written around 1918-1919, and it's a song called "The Man from the Daily Mail." Now, you'll be familiar with the melody and so on, because Christy Moore wrote a song called the Ballad of Bandamore about the time of RT called the Bandamore and so on. And he based it on this. The melody is "The Darling Girl from Clare," written by Percy French. Orla can't wait to get started. Somebody might be asking me later on why Orla isn't talking, but she says, "Whatever you say, I say nothing." I love what she is talking about when I go. All Ireland is a very funny place, sir. It's a strange and a troubled land. The Irish are a very funny race, sir. Every girl's in common of man. Every doggy has a tri-coloured ribbon tied firmly to its tail. And it wouldn't be surprising if there be another rising, said the man from the Daily Mail. Every word upon my word to sing in treble. I'm a rebel, sir. Every hand and chili, the lair and the breeze over there, sir. I declare, sir. And every cock in the farmyard stock is crowing for the gale. And it wouldn't be surprising if there be another rising, said the man from the Daily Mail. Ireland, all the country is seething with traditions. It's Sinn Féin true and true, and the peelers there joining local units, and the password Sinn Féin too. Every doggy wears a tri-coloured ribbon tied firmly to its tail, and it wouldn't be surprising if there be another rising, said the man from the Daily Mail. Every word upon me, for the same treble.
in the farmyard stock is growing for a gale. And it wouldn't be surprising if there be another rising, said the man from the Daily Mail. And it wouldn't be surprising if there be another rising, said the man from the Daily Mail.
This is, as we know, the Sean McDermott Memorial Statue is in the centre of Kilty-Tar, and was unveiled by Miss Madge Dwyer, who I think was a niece of Bishop Edward Dwyer, who was the first bishop amongst the Irish hierarchy, clerical hierarchy, or Catholic hierarchy, to speak out in support of 1916. But this was unveiled on the 12th of May 1940, exactly 24 years to the day after Sean McDermott's execution on the 12th of May 1916. And the statue, the sculptor was called world famous sculptor at the time, Albert Power from Dublin, and it's made out of Irish limestone. It's 70 feet high and it's 6 feet square base. But over 3,000 people attended the unveiling in 1940. A great crowd of what considers severe rationing and everything that was going on during the emergency and so on. And Second World War, as most people call it. But before and after the unveiling, an Ariat, meaning an open-air song, dance and music fest, was held. And the man who organised this was a man called Seamus Payton, who was a teacher at Manor Hamilton Vocational School at the time, and is none other than the father of Orla. This is written by Teresa Brayton, which is a very well-known poet, now known in Ireland. God, I read it in the Observer's 50s and 60s. Every week they had poems by Teresa Brayton in it. And she was hugely popular. Her best known poem is the Old Bog Road, which is put to music later on. But she wrote this poem in memoriam, it's also known as Scroll, for the occasion of the unveiling of the statue in 1940 in Kilty-Tar. And we put it to the ear of a well-known air called Rowan Trey, and I hope you like it. It's 3 of the 5 verses or so that are in it, but it's a lovely piece of writing.
This verdant May, where first he drew earthly breath, we raise this monument today. He will not be quenched in death. For those whom God has willed to lift his torch of liberty to men, wherever freedom's fires are lit, will leap to life again. When Sean McDermott heard the call to shoulder arms for Erin's sake, the bloodstream of his father's hall answered summons wide awake. And out of that room shrilled the cry, strike in our names a blow long due, and we who dare to fight and die, Erin will be there with you. My dear madame, and not upon the stone alone, that name sealed with his blood is set, 'twill flame where noble deeds are done, days unborn to history yet. And men will feel their pulses thrill to read on Erin's glorious scroll of them who broke a tyrant's will, wrung from him their country's soul. My dear madame.
As they were getting ready, mentioned in Easter 1916 by William Butler Yeats, a very long poem. We have taken the last 16 lines of it and we put it to the ear of Eamon Kinkisha, which the expert here in Irish is Whit Sunday morning. But anyway.
but dead. Was it needless death after all? For England make it fade, for all that is gone unsaid, we know the dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. What excess of love bewildered them till they died. I write it out in verse. MacDonagh and McBride and Connolly and Pearce, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, our change utterly, a terrible beauty is born.
Thank you very much. Now we have two short songs written by, one proposed by Brennan Behan, who fears to speak of Easter week, a couple of verses from that, and then his brother, not to be outdone, he wrote a song called Who Dares Not Speak of Easter week. So there had to be some change in the thing there. But anyway, they're very well. They're also, of course, nephews, you know, of Father Carmel. So this is near the end now.
Who fares to speak of Easter week, that week of fame renowned, when the boys in green went out to fight the forces of the crown, with Bowser's bold and hearts of gold, and the countess dressed in green, and high above the GPO the rebel flag was seen. Then came 10,000 khaki cups our rebel boys to fill, before they reached O'Connell Street, a fight they got their fill. Then machine guns and artillery and cannon in galore, but it's not our fault that everyone got back to England shore. And then Dominic, who dares not speak of Easter week? Dares not speak of Easter week, who dares to say he fears the memory of Connolly, of Canton, Clark and Pearce, who will not say McDermott's way, or Blockhead fills with pride. Let you men be true men, like MacDonagh and McBride, who fears remembrance of the past, who lives to fear the day. His children of the present ask where ash and crimson lay, who says the grave is Barry's grave, that hole wherein Mountjoy, as great men be great men, like Rasa and Devoy.
Last song is a poem written by George Russell, and very well you people who enlisted in the British Army, who had nationalist feelings and felt it was the right thing to do at the time, and he also knew quite a number of the rebels who were involved in the 1916 Rising. And this is a song called To the Memory of Someone You, and I suppose he tries to straddle both sides in a way, and you're right, Orla.
Yeah.
If Orla's not all right, I'm not right. Yeah, that's it, yeah. So look, we put this to the air of a song called, this American song called The Whippoorwill. And then we have the last song.
Their dream had left me numb and cold, but yet my spirit rose in pride, refurbishing in burnished gold the images of those who died, or shut in the penal cell. Here's to you, here's your dream, not mine. But yet the thought for this you fell. You turned life's water into wine. You have died on eastern hills, fields of France undismayed, who lit with interlinked wills the long heroic barricade. You too and all the dreams you had taught us something for Ireland done. Life cannot utter words more great than life may meet by sacrifice. High words were equalled by high faith. You paid the price. You paid the price. The hope lives on age after age. Earth with its beauty might be won. For labour as a heritage. For this is Ireland lost a son. Here's to you, men I never met, yet hope to meet behind the veil, thronged on some starry parapet that looks down upon Inishvale and sees the confluence of dreams that flash together in our night. One river born from many streams, run in one place of blinding light.
Thanks very much, and we're finishing up now with Tri-Colour Ribbon, and just to thank you all for coming. Guys are great, they're very patient. I know we've gone over time, we're an hour and a half, it's probably an hour and 15 minutes or so. But thanks very much for being so patient and listening out to the lovely weather outside. I'd like to thank they're mighty. Imagine the sat here for there must be there are two little fellas up here. Sorry, yeah, two little kids up here, and they were great. And another, I know. But I thought when I looked around, I was looking at a creche here. A multi-job, double job at least, you know. But anyway, look, thanks very much for coming. Thanks to Daisy and Nancy. Just to say, Nancy has been pretty tough time as all the Woods family have been in the last while, and our thoughts are with them. But thanks for asking us to do this again. So somebody said to me, will you do another one next year? And I said, that's hardly likely. But maybe we might try the Russian Revolution in 1960. Thanks very much for coming. This is a song again written by Paddy Carney, and it's the air of Green Willow. And people my vintage and older and younger will remember it as All Around My Hat. And it's called Tri-Colour Ribbon. And really, it's about a girl who, promised that she'd stay true to her loved one going off to fight in the 1960 Rising. Okay. I had a true love if ever I had one. I had a
awful